Kia ora koutou, Markie here. If I look like I'm hot, I am. It's got really warm. Go down in a minute to the beach. But in the meantime, shaky camera the wrong way around. Part 2, or is it part 1, of the new series on is porn a problem, or do you have a problem with porn? So the first one was kind of a trailer pilot, so I'm not sure whether I'm going to call this one part 2. I might call this one part 1, because it's kind of the first one in earnest. So a short one. And I just want to look at the question really of how do you know if your porn use is a problem? And this is particularly an issue because people don't talk about their porn use. It's not something that occurs in polite conversation, really. You know, people don't say, how's your porn use going, bro? But I think guys probably do talk about this occasionally and get a sense of how often maybe their friends use porn and stuff like that. And there's a general kind of sense at the moment that everybody uses porn. It's not strictly true, but there are a lot of people that use porn. So it's very normalised. So a lot of people will kind of will assume that everybody's using the same level that they are. So they think that kind of makes it okay. So therefore, the amount of time you use porn isn't a very good indication of whether it's a problem. Okay, I mean, if it's hours and hours and hours, then that starts to give you a bit of a clue. But in itself, it's not really the indicator. The best indicator, and this is the indicator for all addictions, and this comes from a guy called Dr. Jack Cunningham, and he's talking about addiction. Really, but this applies to having a problem with porn. Okay, so there are 3 criteria. Okay, one is you do the behaviour, whatever it might be, in this case porn use, despite negative consequences. Okay, so if there's no negative consequences, it can't be a problem. So it's not about doing a lot of something. It's like I've talked in other videos. I do a lot of breathing, but that's not a problem. That's not an addiction. Okay, so is it causing negative consequences, or, and this is important, is there? Sorry, really shaky camera today. I've got a new case on this phone, which is kind of a bit difficult to manipulate. I have to rethink how I'm going to do this in future, I think. So it could be the risk of future negative consequences. Maybe you're not getting the negative consequences yet, but maybe you kind of know that they're coming. And often the negative consequence is getting busted by the partner that doesn't know about your porn use, and then finds out that that you're using porn a lot. That is often the negative consequence, and that's why I think more people are clued into this issue following the COVID lockdowns. Because people have been on top of one another in bubbles and in lockdowns at home, so their behaviours have been more evident, let's say. The key thing here, okay, there's the 3 points, but the point is continuing to use porn in whatever way you're using it in a way that brings negative consequences. And some of the negative consequences of porn use, heavy porn use, is people actually hurt themselves. That's a common one. People actually damage their genitals. And the other one is a common one with this is just making yourself really tired. Being up all night, that kind of thing, not being able to kind of function very well at work. And some of the other negative consequences we'll talk about more in future videos, which are what happens to the brain, but you might not be aware of that yet. Okay, so but what people tend to be more aware of as negative consequences in the early stages is avoidance of intimacy, tiredness, sometimes physical damage. They're the kind of negative consequences that people are talking about, or embarrassment, or fear of being caught and shamed, or fear of being caught and shamed, and the consequences that a sudden revelation about their porn use might have on a relationship. Okay, because it could, for some relationships that would be the end. For other relationships, some partners, it wouldn't be a big deal. But that is the thing that people often live in fear of, is if my partner finds out exactly what I'm doing and how much I'm doing it, then there'll be questions at the very least. So negative consequences. Okay. Another negative consequence. This no, I'll hold on to that one because I think that fits in another category. So the second category is a degree of escalation. Okay. Now, in my experience with addiction, this isn't always present. It can be very slow. It can kind of happen without you realizing it. Okay, so don't worry too much if this isn't a factor, or if the other two factors still hold true. So some form of escalation, which means more time looking at porn, or looking at different porn, or starting to look at porn at different times. Again, this overlaps a bit with the third one. Usually the escalation is so the escalation can be in hours, or times that you use porn, as in the frequency of porn using sessions, let's say, but it can be the content of the porn. So what tends to happen with internet porn, and we'll maybe talk some more about this, but in some of the future episodes, is people's tastes change. So sometimes what happens is the images that somebody's looking at in the beginning of their porn using career no longer cut it for them. You know, they don't do it. So people become more specialised in what they look for. So you can go from kind of soft core to hardcore, or you can kind of start going down kind of very niche kind of avenues. And for some people, they start to go into kind of illegal stuff, not necessarily child exploitation material, which is what everyone thinks of with illegal stuff, but things like necrophilia is illegal in a lot of countries, and or violence, violent and bestiality, but it can be kind of just more extreme fetishes and niches, and as you'll know, there's a whole kind of variety, 57 varieties of porn, more than 57, 5,700 varieties of porn out there. So what happens with the escalation in this sense is that something that perhaps didn't interest you, or perhaps you found disgusting, or perhaps just you weren't interested in, or you didn't want to go down that route, you start looking at that because what you started looking at wasn't working for you anymore. So basically a change in what you look at, okay, or an increase in the frequency, or duration of sessions, or number of sessions. So the third one is when you are thinking about porn at other times, when it starts to preoccupy you. So there are times when you would reasonably expect your mind to be focused on what you're doing, on other things, but you're thinking, oh God, I can't wait till work finishes because I want to get online, and stuff like also I think this is where the second and third criteria kind of overlap a little bit, is actually using porn at work. That is one of the warning signs, a big warning sign that people have a problem. Okay, so you might not recognize all those three criteria. Other people might, or if you described exactly what you did to somebody else, they might kind of be quite concerned. So it's always interesting that other people sometimes recognize things as a problem before we do. That's kind of quite common, particularly with addiction, that relates a lot to something called the cycle of change, which I've done a video on. So you can check out the cycle of change video, which I have problems with that video actually. So I'm wanting to re-edit it, but I think it is actually out there. You can watch the cycle of change video on my channel. So so that's a bit of a clue as to how you can tell whether it's a problem or not, because talking about comparing your porn use to other people might not tell you anything, might not give you very useful information. And also it's not about the hours, it's about the negative consequences, and about the kind of the addictive factors, and the red flags. So somebody could be using a whole lot more than you, but they might not be having anything like those kinds of problems. So that's kind of one of the ways to look at it, really. So I thought I'd share that one just as a quick one with you. We're going to cover loads more. Okay, so stay with us. Despite the poor video quality, there is content on this channel that you really don't get anywhere else. albeit that it's kind of idiosyncratic. So I hope that's helpful. Send us any questions, and I always want to kind of leave you with kind of hopeful message, really, that there is help available. If you have problems with this kind of thing, you're not on your own. People do get better from this kind of thing, but you do need the right kind of help. So you do need to be quite kind of discerning in where you go and who you see. But we can talk some more about that anyway. And any questions, any worries, give me a message. You can also contact me via the website. The website is focused around retroactive jealousy, but you can talk about you can contact us about anything through the website. Rangimarie, thanks for watching.